What's up, guys? We got a good episode here today. Jethro, how's it going, man?
I'm good, man. I'm chilling.
So we got Jethro Constant, who sucks at fantasy football. We'll just say that. But no, in all honesty, he is a physiotherapist, ex-football player at Ottawa U. Um, he's a community advocate. I think his proudest moment is he's a father of four,
Yes,
four
sir.
strong
Yes,
men.
sir.
So I'm very excited to have him. We're gonna have a great conversation. He's also a podcast host, which I hope he doesn't sabotage this one to make his go up. But no, I'm happy about this. I connected with Jethro years ago. I had unfortunate injuries with my knee, and I wanted someone who was more sports focused. And Jethro really focuses on not only rehab but prehab. So excited to have him here, and yeah, man. Hopefully this is gonna be a good time.
Hopefully, man. Don't mess up.
Pressure's on me, man. Pressure's on me. So Jethro, you're a proud Haitian. What was it like growing up in a Haitian household?
Man, growing up in a Haitian household was wild, man. It was entertainment nonstop. It's one of those things. It's funny because I have trouble being in silence because I was so used to there always being something in the house.
How big is your family?
It was myself, my parents. I have two older sisters, and I have a half brother too, but he's in Haiti right now.
Okay.
But man, it was wild. My dad is a mechanic, so he's like stereotypical old school mechanic, raspy voice, like And then I got my mom who's singing her church spirituals all the time, and then my sisters, they're knuckleheads and just arguing all the time. Just there was always noise. You know what I mean? I think that's probably one of the reasons why I'm obsessed with listening to music, because the silence is deafening to me. And I feel like most Haitians, they'll tell you the same. They'll say quiet is not something that you associate with a Haitian household ever.
All right. Were you born in Canada, or did you guys immigrate here, or what's the story of the immigration to Canada?
So my mom came to Canada first.
Okay.
She got a contract as a house helper or something like that, and then my sisters and my dad came afterwards. Like we're talking, late 70s ish. And then it's a funny story because my mom, this is back she was in Montreal initially, and then and then when they came, they all moved to Hull. And my mom was always telling me, she's like, you know what? I told God, I'm not stopping until I have a boy, because she just kept having girls. And then I showed up in the early 80s, and yeah, man. And then now we're here. We're here. So I'm the only one who was born here.
Okay.
So it's still jokes though, because my parents, they'll make a traditional Haitian meal, and I'll say, man, that looks delicious. And then my mom's jokes, because she's very, like I said, she's very subdued, very quiet. And I'll say, hey, Mom, man, that rice looks delicious. And then she'll be like, but white people don't eat this. And I'm like, what you trying to say? And she's like, you born here, baby. And I'm like, no, Mom, come on, stop playing. But, they poke fun at me from time to time. But it's jokes, because I like to speak our mother tongue, Creole, better than my sisters do. But it's just, Haitians are just built differently, man.
Was it a strict household, or?
It wasn't. I think it was it was interesting, because I had my sisters and then there was me, and my dad was tough with me because I was like the main boy, because my half brother was older, you know what I mean? But I was the main boy, so he had to
toughen you up.
Toughen me up, I look at it now and I'm
those mechanic hands are no joke.
Yo, in those Popeye forearms, you know what I mean? So he was kind of tough on me, but you look at it in retrospect now that I have 4 kids, and I have 4 boys. I'm like, okay, I get it. My mom, everybody knows, man. My mom's my homegirl. You know what I mean? She's along with my wife, she's the Jethro whisperer. You know what I mean? Yeah, I have the Caribbean temper. It pops up from here, from time to time, and then my mom will just say, Jethro, how you doing there, son? And I'm like, all right, I'm deflated. Okay, what do you want, mom? Like,
So,
we good, you know?
so anyone who doesn't know Jethro is a big dude. I mean, you're probably how tall are you? How much you weigh? You're sitting down right now, but we're gonna get into why you played football because it was probably a natural progression. But
Yeah.
how big are you, man?
I'm about, I stand about 6'3".
Okay.
And the svelte version of me right now is like 240. So I was bigger back in my playing days, but.
So did you just play, like, how did you get into football and what did kind of like sports mean to you? Was it an outlet for you or like, how did you get into it?
You know what? Like, I was always the athletic fat kid. You
Okay.
know what I mean? Like, when I was in elementary school, I remember when I was like, it must have been like grade 4 or 5, and I was running track. And I remember going to the starting blocks for sprinting, and literally one of the people that was organizing it, they said, yo, shot put's over there. And I said, no, I'm supposed to be here. You know what I mean? And just it kind of went from there. Like my sisters are super athletic too.
Okay.
Like my sister ran hurdles at OFSA.
You got the Caribbean genes, man.
Yeah, it's in our DNA. You know,
Yeah.
it's fast twitch muscles. You know, and but football wasn't my first sport.
Okay.
You know, growing up, I love football. I was always watching it. You know, the first time I saw those green, white, and red helmets, red, white, and gold helmets of the Niners, like that was it for me.
Green,
I know. I don't know why I said
Green
green.
Bay,
it's
man,
because I
come
see
on.
a book behind you, and
Okay.
you know,
You're tired. It's been a long day.
It's been a long day. But growing up, like I played everything. I played baseball. I played soccer. You know, when I was in high school, actually, I didn't even play football.
Okay.
I actually played rugby and volleyball. So it's kind of funny when people were like, "Oh, you play volleyball? You're a wuss." I'm like, "I play rugby too," and they're like, "Oh, okay, my bad."
Volleyball was a fun sport, man.
It was so much fun.
I enjoyed. That was like I love basketball. I was known for basketball, but volleyball was like probably my best sport in high school.
Okay.
I don't know, maybe my high school teammates might differ, but I always said, man, if I was like 3 inches, 4 inches taller, man, I would have had a career. I would have had a career in something, but God couldn't create me so perfectly. You know what I mean? Couldn't create me so perfectly. He didn't give me the hair, and the height, but everything else I'm good. But also we had an ARK sports tournament, a volleyball tournament. My team came second, but that's not. We won't get into that. I think there's a picture behind me too of a soccer tournament that my team won second as well. So we lost in the finals, man.
Yo, listen, you're just one.
I'm an organizer though, so I can't win it.
But you're one man.
No, but I'm an organizer, so I couldn't win it to say it's rigged.
It's rigged
because there's prizes and stuff. But yeah, man. So what high school did you go to?
I went to Immaculata.
Okay.
I went to Immaculata. Not too far from St. Pat's, but
yeah,
you know,
Immaculata was a good school, very nicely situated right on the canal.
Yeah, it was dope.
It kind of felt like it was a monster school. I just remember that pond, like they had this little pond with koi fish or something like that. Was it a pond? It was like there was fish. There was something in the cafeteria. Maybe that came after you.
No. There was. You're right. When you first came down the stairs from the entrance, there were koi fish. You are correct. It was a fun school, man. I had a good time. I don't know what it's like now, and back then, like I had grade 13, right?
So, we talked about that on another episode.
Yeah, so it was.
I was the first year where we didn't have that.
Yo, grade 13 was amazing because I'm a bit of a nerd, right?
Okay.
So, in the summer after grade 10 and the summer after grade 11, I took reach ahead courses.
Okay.
So by the time I got to
you probably
grade
had like
13,
5 spares.
So basically each semester was four time periods.
Yeah.
I had 2 classes each semester. That's it. So my first semester I had class from 8:30 till lunch, and then after that the next semester I had class, lunch, class, and then I went home. So great experience to me.
So we talked about earlier that you were a physiotherapist.
Mm-hmm.
Your parents were, you said your father was strict, but you had an amazing childhood. The way you talked about your family, you could just feel that it was a great relationship. Did you know what you wanted to be early on? Was academics really important to your family? Because I know for me and a lot of immigrants, our parents were like, you got to go to university, you got to get your degree, but it wasn't like you got to do this.
Mm-hmm.
Other parents where their parents may have been here for a bit longer, they might tell you, okay, you got to be a doctor or whatever. But did your parents instill like what you needed to do, or was it more just go to university?
It was really just go to university, man. Because when I look at both of my parents, like that, my parents are my heroes, man. Because just the circumstances that they lived, like my mom's been an orphan since she was 12.
Okay.
Right. She lost her parents really, really early. And then my dad, he stopped going to school in like grade 7 or 8 because he had 8 or 9 siblings, and he was the oldest boy.
Okay.
So it was like, yo, right away, like
You become a man, really.
Yeah, you stop. And I think my grandfather, it's jokes. I'm almost 40, and this is the first time my dad told me this. Like my grandfather was like a bricklayer or something like that, right?
Okay.
Really like laborious work and stuff like that. So he had to stop going to school. So in their mind, like when we were in Canada, obviously, like they immigrated here so that their kids could have a better life and everything. Yeah. They just said, yo, just go to school, just get good grades, just
don't be an embarrassment.
Exactly. Don't embarrass the name. You know what I mean? Just get good grades. But it was jokes though, because they never got to the level that we did in terms of like even finishing high school. You know what I mean? And I remember I would talk to my parents, and like I said, I was a bit of a nerd. So, I'd come home and I'd say, hey, check out this test. I got a 97 on it. My mom would say, that's good. What happened to the 3%? You know what I mean? And I'm just like, well, damn. So that's why even today, like I sometimes have a little bit of trouble when I'm helping like my kids with homework, because at their age, I was so independent. Like my parents couldn't help me. Yeah. You know what I mean? So it was like, okay, they would help me by supporting me. Like I remember I'd be doing homework and my mom would bring me like a snack, or she'd bring me something to drink, and she's like, oh, okay, do you need anything else while you're doing your homework?
I'm sure your siblings probably had to play a little bit of a helping role. Maybe not. I'm not trying to throw anyone under the bus.
Oh, no. It's not. It wasn't even like that. It's just I feel like every kid is different, right? Yeah. Like me, I was more like a math science guy. And one of my sisters is like a phenomenal artist. You know what I mean? But like I'm not gonna ask her help on trigonometry. Like that's not her thing. And then I have my other sister who is more like customer service, doing that type of thing, interacting with people, networking. Like that's her specialty. Which
is a skill. Like there's beauty 100%. In every skill, man.
100%. So
unfortunately, more. Certain skills pay more than others, but it's still a skill.
Yeah, exactly. So, so they helped when they kind of could. Yeah. But I think their help was more like, making me see the realities of the world and raising me with my parents and so on and so forth, because I was the youngest sibling. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's kind of interesting because my brother, like I said, my half brother, like he's in Haiti right now. So one of the first lessons my mom ever gave me was she sat me down, because the reason my half brother is in Haiti is because he had a few issues with the law. Okay. So he ended up being, unceremoniously told to go back to Haiti, right? So one of the first lessons my mom taught me at a very young age, I must have been in like, I don't know, grade 7, 8, I can't even remember. She sat me down. She said, here you go. I want you to read this. It was like 3 pages long. It was my brother's rap sheet.
Oh, okay.
And she's like, read it, study it, don't do it. And that was like one of my first lessons. And she was like,
scared straight.
Like it was scared straight. And the thing is, like I was kind of oblivious. Like there were still things that were happening around me, and I kind of knew they were happening, but whatever. I'm a kid.
It goes to the foundation of your parents. Like I remember going grade 7, I went to St. Patrick's Day. First day of school, there was people smoking cigarettes, and I'm sure nowadays it's even more so. But it was like, okay, it's not like I didn't want to go around that, but it was like my parents raised me a certain way, and I didn't want to let them down, right? And now it's kind of what it was.
Of course.
So it's just interesting, man. The immigrant, being a son of an immigrant is a different dynamic. You don't want to let them down. You don't want to let your aunts and uncles down. Even your brother will slap you if you have to. Like there's just an accountability that it's like a cloud that's always over you, right? So it's an interesting dynamic. So I asked you about physiotherapy. Was that something that you knew you wanted to go into, or human kinetics at that time, or like how did it come about?
So to be honest, like when I got out of high school, like I really didn't know what I wanted to do.
Even with OAC?
Even with OAC. But the thing is, because my parents told me, work hard at everything, it kept my options open, right? Like if I have good grades in everything, then my options are open for everything.
That was one of my regrets, because I dropped the sciences when I was able to, and dropped them calculus and all that. I dropped that stuff. I was just focused on getting a good average and doing my best to take the classes that'll get me that average.
Yeah, exactly. And the thing is, you know what? I'm gonna say something though, something that I want to tell any youngster. If there's a class that you're not good at, leave it for the last semester of high school, because you're gonna get early acceptance. So leave that class, because you know what killed me? I remember, because I hated English, because I was like, you know what? I'm never going to speak Shakespearean in real life. This is pointless. I never found it motivating to actually do the class.
You didn't like Hamlet?
The stories were cool, but I'm never gonna use that. Like if I walked into a bank and I started talking in a Shakespearean manner, they would think I'm crazy.
Of course, anyone would think you're
crazy.
crazy.
Everyone would think I'm crazy. So I always told myself, I'm like, what's the point of learning this? There's no point. So I didn't really put a lot of effort into it. And it was the one class that brought down my average. Okay. So I always tell, kids who are in high school, I'm like, listen, if there's a class that you hate and you're not gonna put a lot of effort, or just that you just straight don't feel motivated to do, make sure you take it in the last semester, because that way when you get your early acceptance and they ask for your transcripts, they base your average on those classes from the year before and your first semester. They're not going to look at your second semester.
Very true.
You know what I mean? And that puts you in a more favorable position to get accepted with perhaps a scholarship or into the program that you even want.
See, Jethro is dropping knowledge. He's giving us knowledge, and this is what we need. So you talk about you didn't really play football in a competitive. Like, when did you start playing football?
So that actually ties into the story of how I ended up becoming a physiotherapist in the first place. Because when I left high school, I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I liked numbers, right? Okay. And so guidance counselors were like, oh, engineering. There's numbers there, go ahead. So I was like, all right, I mean, my dad's a mechanic. Engineering might make sense, whatever. Man, like a month in, I was like, nah, this ain't for me. Like, I hated
This is Ottawa U?
Yeah. I was in mechanical engineering, and I was just like, I hate this. I do not like this whatsoever. It was also because the numbers disappeared. It became very theoretical, and there were no more numbers. And I was like, I'm a numbers guy. Yeah. And it was either I was going to go into engineering. I almost accepted a scholarship to go into commerce. Okay. But I was just like, whatever, I'll do engineering. So what ended up happening, which is very interesting, is I remember I was going to the gym with my buddy in the program. And one day I was just working out at the gym. And this dude just walks up to me, just kind of stares at me, but he doesn't say anything. So I look at my boy, I'm like, I don't know who this dude is, man. Like, he giving me the heebie-jeebies. I don't know who this is. So I just keep working out, and the dude's just standing there. I was like, this is just weird. But then finally, he says, oh, he's like, sorry, I didn't mean to intrude or disturb you. I'm the head football coach here at Ottawa U. And I'm like, okay. And he's like, you ever play football? I said, or in an organized manner? Nah, never. I've always been a fan, but never in an organized manner. And he said, you should. And I was like, all right. So he invited me to spring camp.
But context, were you bigger at that point?
I was a little bit. I don't know. I was probably like 230, maybe something like that. But he was.
Were you working out?
I was working out. Okay. I was working out regularly. Working out the frustration of hating the program I was in. Yeah. But he invited me to spring camp, and but I didn't go because I had like exams, and I was just kind of like hating life a little bit in the sense that I was like, I don't even want to be in this program. Like, it sucks, And I didn't do very well at all because my motivation was gone. I didn't want to do anything.
No, yeah.
And I didn't go to the class. Yeah. So then I found the coach. I said, my apologies. I didn't come to spring camp because of school and yada, yada, yada. But thank you for, showing interest. But then that same beginning of the summer, one of my buddies was like, yo, there's a Ontario Varsity League football team that's starting up. It's the Cumberland Panthers. It's the first time they're going to have like a varsity team, which is like 19 years of age or older. He's like, yo, come and play. He's like, what are you doing? I was like, man, I ain't doing nothing. Like, I was just chilling. I had a part-time job during the summer. And he's like, yo, come and play. So I ended up playing the whole season. It was my first year of playing organized football, right? And then it went really, really well. I ended up getting, letters of interest and scholarship offers from probably like 10 or 12 schools. But I was already at Ottawa U, you know what I mean? So then he sent me an email, and he's like, oh, he's like, we've been watching you play summer ball, and you've been killing it, and we really want you to join Ottawa U. And then I told him, I was like, yo, I'd love to join Ottawa U, but right now I'm basically on academic probation because I didn't do anything. Yeah. And he's just like, I'll take care of it. So I was like, okay, like, I'll leave it in your hands, whatever. And then I gave it a couple of weeks, and then he messaged me, and he's like, okay, you're into, because he said, what program do you want to get into? I said, I'd love to get into human kinetics, just because of the way the body works. I'd enjoy that. So he's like, okay, let me see what I could do. So he put me into so he somehow finagled, and I got into human kinetics on like probation, right? And I was like, I'm one of those dudes. I was like, just get me my foot in the door. It's kind of like fantasy, right? It's like I just want to make playoffs.
Yeah, exactly.
I'll take care of it afterwards, you know. So once I got in, you know, everything went well with human kinetics afterwards. But the reason it ended up tying into physiotherapy even more was because, like, when you play football, like, you're gonna get hurt.
You got to take care of your body.
You got to take care of your body, but you're gonna get hurt.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't get hurt, like, you ain't trying hard.
There's
enough.
a reason why there's one game a week.
Exactly, right? So, you know, I spent some time in the therapist room, you know, in the athletic therapist room, you know, with Nicks and things like that, and then, but the thing is, I made the team, and I had a herniated disc. I didn't even know.
Okay.
I just had back pain, and I was like, it's gonna go away as the season goes on, and it just never got better. So when finally I was working with the trainers, I got a scan, and then they're like, oh, you have a herniated disc. So after my first season with Ottawa U, I ended up getting back surgery.
Oh, wow.
Right? So once I got back, that was like 2004, something like that. 2004, I had a discectomy, which means they just shaved the herniated part of the disc that was bulging out and rubbing against my spinal cord. And I had a laminectomy, which means they shaved some of the bone that the spinal cord runs through.
I'm sure you heard that you were super young for this surgery.
Yeah. It was like I was 21, so it was pretty young. It was pretty young, but I had surgery in May, and I was bedridden for a little while, and then I started walking in like July, and, you know, did some rehab, did all that stuff, and I was hitting by August. But I still had like back spasms and stuff like that. But you would imagine how much rehab I had to do.
So did that pique your interest into getting more into it?
Exactly. So I was like, when the trainer started working on me, I was like, man, this is kind of interesting. I mean, I think I could do this. So then that got my interest right away. And this was like in second year of HK. I was about to go into second year of HK, right?
Yeah.
So gradually, like, again, more injuries, and, you know, it's football, whatever. But every time I would go to the trainer's room, like, I was fascinated. I was like, like, I really think this is something I could do.
Yeah.
And then by the end of my collegiate, you know, well, my second last year or something like that, I was just like, okay, well, I'm gonna be done with this degree in human kinetics. Like, what am I gonna do with it? And my options were, I was thinking about becoming a teacher.
Yeah.
And then Ottawa U just happened to be promoting that they were going to start a physio program, not the year that I was done, but the year after.
Okay.
So I was like, you know what? You know what I'm gonna do? I took a year where I studied leisure studies, and like I did nothing all year. Like, it was bird courses all year just to play football, just boosting my averages and waiting for the program to start. And then I went in for the interview, applied, and then I got into physiotherapy, and it's kind of been a wrap ever since. So,
what do you miss about, before we get into your professional life, what do you miss about football and team sports? I mean,
camaraderie, man. Camaraderie. Like, you remember games, you remember, you know, events pertaining to the sport, but man, like, my kids still call a lot of my teammates uncle. You know what I mean? Like, those are your
lifelong friends.
Those are lifelong friends. Those are your boys. Those are dudes that, you know, you bled with, you cried with, you screamed with. Sometimes you went to the bar and got into fights with. You know, like, those are your homeboys.
Sometimes you even fought yourself.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying. You know what I mean? Like, you were always there for each other, and it really, that's the thing I remember the most. Just like hanging out. You know what I mean? So, you know, and yeah, it's the bond. It's the bond. And the thing is, it's funny that we talk about this because, you know, there's a lot of stuff going on in the world, and I remember telling one of my friends, and I said, I think I have a unique perspective when it comes to certain issues in the world because I played sports, right? Like, it wasn't all people who look like me.
Yeah.
Right? I had to deal with different personalities. I had to deal with different cultures, you know, like,
for sure,
different things like that.
Especially being in Ottawa too.
Exactly. Like, it's a multicultural hodgepodge, you know what I mean? So it's like, not only are you in Ottawa, but for football, guys are coming in from other provinces.
Yeah. So
you end up meeting different people with different backgrounds who have different views, and it's almost like the team is a microcosm for life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Because you're gonna come across people who are Buddhists, who are Muslims, who
talk a lot,
who don't talk, who come from small towns where there are no people who look like me, you know, like different things like that. So it really does shape your character when you're playing sports at that level. Like, yes, if you play high school sports, you know, depending on the city you come from, like, you're going to have a majority of one demographic of people.
Yeah.
But when you're playing university ball, like you have everything. You have everything. So it forces you to really get accustomed to, hey, there's different people in the world who have different views, and you have conversations in the locker room that people might have a different perspective from you, and then they learn from you, you learn from them.
It's a beautiful thing, man.
It is, man. It really is.
It's a beautiful thing. I mean, I'm a proud Ottawa U alumnus. Our producer went to Ottawa U. I think he's doing his master's at Ottawa U. So it's a PhD. My bad. And so it's an Ottawa U room. But how did sports, or the lessons you learned in sports, kind of help you get to where you are right now? You're a pretty well-known physiotherapist now. Mm-hmm. You have a specific I wouldn't say ideology, but you're kind of different from others. Mm-hmm. And you've trained high-level athletes. You've trained CFL players. You've trained, high-end NCAA players, people that are going to be drafted very soon. Mm-hmm. How did those lessons that you learned in sports kind of go into it? I know it's easier when you look the way you do, and someone comes into your room, you're like, okay, it's not some random dude that has a tucked-in shirt and probably can't even bench, 100 pounds. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Does that help, or like what is it?
I think it does. When people know that you've lived it, like they're more open to listening to what you have to say, right? Like, if you never played football or you never played a competitive sport and you're like, well, you should do this, they're gonna be like, you don't know what I'm trying to do here. You know what I mean? And like, and that's the thing. Like, for example, I remember I was training different people who were in the CFL and in the NFL, and I'm taking into account, they're like, I don't want someone to take my spot. And I was like, and I could relate. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I totally get it. And it does definitely add something to the trust factor and the relationship that you're gonna have with your patient, because let's be real too. Like, when you are starting with a patient, you're going to forge a relationship one way or another, because you're going to see each other more than once.
Correct.
Right?
I mean, that's what happened with us.
Exactly. Right. So so it's very important that person feel like you are confident in what you're doing, and that they know that you can empathize with them.
Correct.
That's very important. Very important. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, there's so many, like, guys get a bad rep that we don't communicate well with women, that we don't know how to do this stuff. But sports really teaches you how to communicate with people. Yeah. It's about, number one, I think the most important thing as a coach is defining roles. Certain players that are able to excel and certain people who are able to have longevity is that they've accepted roles, right? So you learn so much different things in sports that really just impact life. If someone says something, you might call them out on it and say, hey, this is what I think it might be, because you learned it in sports that, hey, if we don't fix this, we're going to lose this game, right? So there's a lot of life lessons that, we can, that's really why we're having this, to teach people that, because not everyone's going to be a professional athlete. This is going to be a constant theme in my podcast, because it's so hard to be a professional athlete. It's not easy, right? So you're going to have a good high school career. You're going to go, you might end up playing a high level club ball. You might get cut. Most likely you're going to get cut from university because it's hard. And there's probably like a 3% chance that you're going to go pro. And I'm probably exaggerating that 3%.
You are.
So, I mean, let's talk about your philosophy in physiotherapy, because you are different than other people. You have a more of approach of mobility, just being like, I remember I've had 3 knee surgeries, right? I remember my vision of physiotherapy. I come in, I put the muscle stent on, I do the ultrasound, and hey, we'll see you next week. I'll give you a couple of handouts with what to do. I remember coming to you and it was like, you didn't do any of that stuff. So I'm like, okay, what's going on? So what is your philosophy? And let's talk about how youth can kind of take care of their body, right? Because they're spending so much time on computers. They're spending so much time on their phones. They're probably having neck issues. Let's get into that philosophy before we get into some other stuff about your family and whatnot.
Okay, cool. One thing I'm going to add, because you asked me about how sports translated to what I'm doing now. The other thing about sports is that it teaches you discipline, big time. It teaches you time management, which is a huge tool that most kids don't have.
Yeah.
And it also teaches you problem solving, right? Which is something you're going to need in your life. If things don't always go according to plan, like, what are you going to do, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I'm watching film on an offensive tackle and I'm like, okay, he short steps, he does this, he does that, he does this, and then I go and I start the game and it's another offensive tackle, and I'm like, this isn't who I watched film on.
Yeah.
What am I going to do here? You know what I mean? So you have to, like, problem solve on the fly. But coming back to your question with regards to my philosophy, I was always I didn't like passive modalities, and what I mean by passive is like you just said, like just a muscle stim without like any movement. It's just put the muscle stim on, just an ultrasound. The place where I work right now, I work at Human 2.0, which is just down the street from here. I have an ultrasound machine. In 8 years, I've used it maybe 8 times, right? So it's not something that I want to do. I'd rather get people moving because our philosophy is movement is medicine. Like that's how it goes. And the thing is, more and more, you are seeing that, other physios, are. I almost feel like we were kind of ahead of the curve a little bit because we're seeing more and more that just being passive, like it doesn't work.
Yeah.
Right. And
might make you money because people are going to keep coming back to you, but it's not.
Exactly. And I don't like that. Like I feel like my calling is to help people get better. And like I said, I was either going to be a teacher or going to physio.
Yeah.
But I still feel like a teacher in a way because I'm still educating people while I'm helping them get better. And
yeah, you're like that cool gym teacher.
Yeah, I like to think so. I like to think so. And the thing is, like, I remember when I met the owner of the facility where I work. His name is Dr. Christopher Rayner, and he was telling me, he was asking me like, what do you think? And then the big thing with him is that he because he's an orthopedic surgeon, and he was like, the reason I want to open this spot is because I would perform surgery on people, and then I would see them down the road, they'd come back and they weren't better, and I was like, what's happening? Like, it doesn't make any sense. So this way, I know what they need, and I know that you, speaking of, to me, it's like I know we're on the same page because I remember even before I got here to Human 2.0, I remember I would be working with people who had like knee replacements, right?
Yeah.
And I'm mean, but I'm not evil.
Yeah.
That's what I tell people all the time. I'm like, I'm mean, but I'm not evil, which means like I'm gonna hurt you, but there's a purpose. You already know. You already know. So I'm gonna hurt you, but there's a purpose behind it. You know what I mean? And I tell people you're gonna hate me, but you're gonna love the process, and you're gonna.
It hurts, but it feels better.
Exactly. You're gonna understand why I did what I did. I'm not just some crazy person, right? And people were seeing results, and this was even before I got to Human 2.0. Okay. It was really like, a person with a knee replacement, and I'd go to town on their knee. They're like, why does this hurt so much? I'm like, because that's part of the process. Like, this is what you got to do. And what's funny is a lot of them would tell me, I thought you were crazy until I would go for a follow-up, and then I'd see people who had surgery around the same time I did, and I'd see them in the waiting room, and they're worse than me.
Yeah. And
then it made me understand, oh, this is necessary, right? And there was also, because the way we were formed essentially is that we had Dr. Rayner, who was the orthopedic surgeon. I was the head physio, which I still am. And then at the time, we were also working with a gentleman named Tyler Touchette, right, who's a mobility specialist who works out of he has his own gym in Cornwall. Okay. So when I started working with him, like, he taught me a lot about, I was already working on movement, but he taught me a lot about mobility. And I incorporated it, and it became like a synergy into my practice, right? Where I was like, okay, this is interesting. And and again, remember I said I love numbers. So one of the aspects I love about physiotherapy is the biomechanical aspect of things. So I would always, he would do something and I'm like, okay, I would always analyze it from a biomechanical standpoint and think, okay, well, this muscle activates and this does this. Is that okay? I can see where this would help a patient get better. And then the crossover happened. And because we work so closely together, it just all made sense.
Before we get into like some of the issues that youth are getting into with injuries and just non-sports related injuries, was getting a good income something important to you? Is that something that intrigued you about physiotherapy? I don't know what your situation like was when you were growing up. I don't know if you guys were middle class or whatever, but was doing well and money and motivation for you to get into that? Like, did you think about that, or was it just the passion?
To be honest, it really was the passion.
Okay.
I when I got into it, I looked at it after. Like, I didn't look into what is a physiotherapy salary before I got into physiotherapy. Okay. I really didn't. It's after the fact. I was like, okay, what's the average salary? Oh, okay, that's pretty good.
And were your parents, was that something your parents were proud about, that going into that, or?
Yeah, they were really happy. My dad and I had a few, as the French would say, tête-à-tête, because you know, again,
You're not a doctor.
you took the words right out of my mouth, right? And the thing is, because I also got an offer from McGill, right? But McGill's football is dookie. I was like, I don't want to play football for McGill. They're terrible. And my dad's like, oh, I want you to go to McGill. You're going to be a doctor. And I'm like, nah, that ain't for me. Like, I see myself in the rehab field, but I don't want to be a doctor. I don't want to go to school forever. I'm like, I'll leave that to Dr. Rayner. Like, I'm not trying to go to school. Maybe down the road, I'll get my PhD as a physiotherapist. Yeah. But as a medical doctor, I was just, nah, that wasn't for me. But for my parents, I just told them, hey, this is what I'm going to be doing. And they knew of that occupation. So they're like, oh, okay, that's cool. You know, you're going to help people. And like I said, you know, my mom, my dad, like, especially my mom, they're like God-fearing people. So they're just like, oh, you're going to be helping people.
Okay, so that's a good way to look at it.
So it's cool.
Because this conversation probably doesn't happen with every household. And I don't want to knock different people, but as an immigrant, yeah, it's not like I can go take a year off and being a son of an immigrant, it's not like you can go take a year off and go hiking. No, man. You gotta.
That wasn't an option.
There's no option in that.
That was right? Not an option.
And I'm not knocking people who do that. Like if that's what you want to do, I mean, everyone is free to do what they want. But I'm just saying the reality is, no, man. No. That's when you're gonna really meet your dad's rough hands.
And I forget, and I always forgot he was a lefty too. You know? So it's like you brace yourself on the wrong side all the time when you get disciplined. But you know, that's a different story.
So let's get to, I mean, what we're trying to do here is motivate the youth, and we'll talk about. I'll ask you some questions about looking back on your life and whatnot, but. Kids are spending a lot of times playing video games, and not only kids, but just even myself, I play video games, but a lot of people spend hours on video games, and it's a very lucrative industry, and there's money to be made. There's a lot of hours being spent online, and there's algorithms to keep the kids on their phones and whatnot. Even look at people who are not athletes, who are working for the government, spending hours at a desk. You know, we did a webinar about, you know, sitting is the new smoking. It's a disease. And are you seeing things now as a physiotherapist with younger kids that are not, like, maybe they got injured in sports, but it came about outside from sports? Like, are you seeing things like this now?
Absolutely. Honestly, during this, you know, this time that we're living in the world right now, I've never been this busy. Okay. Honestly, I've never been this busy. And remember how I mentioned movement is medicine, right? So if you're not moving, your body, the thing that people don't realize about the body is inherently lazy. Okay, the body's inherently lazy. Whatever you tell the body to do, the body will do. Yeah. So if you sit there and you're on your computer, or you're playing video games, or you're on your phone, or you're doing things like that, your body will physically change to adapt. No, it will physically change. Like this is scientific. It will physically change its properties in order to adapt to what you've been doing. Yeah. Right. So that's why we're seeing that problem, especially with the youth now. If they're on their computer a lot, you're hearing about kids now who have like headaches. That's crazy. Like we didn't hear about headaches being an issue before, or having low back pain, you know, things like that, or tight hamstrings. Kids who are younger than me should not
neck issues.
Exactly, right? And kids, I always say, like, kids who are half my age should not, you know, have less flexibility than I do.
Yeah, I remember you posting about your kids doing a full squat, and I started thinking about that. Exactly. So my daughter was doing the squat, and then I'm like, we're built a certain way, and we should be able to continue to do that.
It's because we lose it over time. We all, even before, you know, the increase in sedentary lifestyle, we were already losing it, because that's why, personally, to me, as soon as they get to, you know, elementary school, they start sitting on chairs, start sitting in desks. So it's making them sedentary in that moment. You know what I mean? Because I always say, if you want to see how you're supposed to move as a human being, look at a child between the age of 1 and 5. It's like they got ants in their pants. They can't stop moving, right? Yeah. But people nowadays, they look at them, they're like, oh, you know, they have attention issues, or
they want to label it with something.
They want to label them with something, but it's like, no, like the human body is not intended to just not move. Yeah. Right? And we as adults, a lot of times, you know, I feel fortunate with my job. The only time I really sit is when I'm doing paperwork and things like that. But other than that, I'm always moving, you know. But the overwhelming majority of adults, like, we just sit there, right? And then our bodies go, okay, cool, we're sitting here. Because that's what we're doing.
Sometimes if you sit all day, at the end of the day, you're looking like, oh man, my hip is hurting, my hem, like as if you played sports. Like, man, it's a sign to tell you that something is not right, right?
Exactly. And it's crazy because like you were saying, you know, injuries that we see with the youth, and as you said, like we see hip issues, we see low back issues, we're even seeing thumb issues,
Like carpal tunnel stuff.
because they're typing and playing video games too much. Like this is a real thing that we're seeing now clinically, right? Or like I said to you before, headaches because they're on a computer, they're like this, or they're watching video games and they're like this. It's sad, really, because I remember, and it's also the climate of the world, because I remember when I was like 11, okay? I remember I would just tell my mom at like 9 a.m. I'd be like, all right, I'll see you later.
Yeah.
I'm out. She wouldn't see me till like 6, 7 p.m.
I had an older brother, and I would jump on my CCM Blitz, and I was all over the place on my bike, man.
100%.
Just going.
But nowadays, do I picture myself looking at my 11-year-old son and saying, okay, you're taking your bike at 9 a.m., I'll see you in 10 hours? No, like I would love to.
Yeah.
But it's not the reality of the world we live in these days. So, you know, you need to get them moving as much as possible, or else they're going to get accustomed to not moving, right? It's I don't know, it's frustrating because because when you see adults that don't move very well, they came from a generation where we did move.
Yeah.
So imagine where kids are going to be if they start off by not moving.
So what would you suggest that kid who's, I don't want to say kid, but the teenager who's good at sports? You know, I think the elite athletes are probably already training. They're probably seeing people like you. They're taking care of their health. But that guy who's in, or the girl who's in high school, they play for their team. Should they be stretching? Like, what are stuff like, you know, that we didn't think of, and you wish that you look back that you would have taken care of your body to maybe avoid that back surgery?
Man, stretching's a big one, but just exercise and movement as a whole, and outside of your sport. It's like I'll never forget. I remember seeing a graphic once. Remember when Ohio State won the national championship when they had Ezekiel Elliott and they had all those guys? I remember seeing a graphic, and I think they said out of the 53 athletes, they had 47 that were multi-sport athletes.
Oh, okay.
Right? So if you're playing a sport or you're doing something different all year round, like I said, I played rugby and I played volleyball.
Yeah, there's a reason why professional athletes train in MMA, even though they're basketball players or boxing. Yeah, there's benefits in everything.
And they're just well-rounded athletes. But even more so when you're thinking about it in a school perspective, you play something different every other season. You know what I mean? Because if you just say, okay, well, I'm just going to play soccer, I'm just going to play volleyball, I'm just going to play this. No, play it all. Play it all. Because you're going to, and the thing is, you're going to have so much body awareness because your body will have moved in so many different ways. It's like, it makes me think of, there was a boxer, Lomachenko, right? He's this phenomenal. They used to call him the Matrix. Like, he's still boxing now, but they call him the Matrix. And one of the things that I remember reading is his dad wanted him to be like a world champion boxer. So what did he do? For, I think it was either a year or 2 years, he didn't even let him box. What he did was he made him learn traditional Ukrainian dance.
Oh, okay.
For the footwork.
It's kind of like the Karate Kid.
Exactly. No, but exactly. So that's why I remember one of the things, for example, like, you know, not to name drop, I coach Neville Gallimore. Okay, he plays for Dallas right now. What was his first thing? Basketball, right? So the footwork, moving.
A brother that was really good at basketball, who we're going to be interviewing as well. So.
Nice. But that's what I'm saying. Like, the fact that he moved well with basketball translated to other things.
Yeah, for sure.
So to answer your question, it's just kids just got to move. Like, find a hobby where you have to move, whether it's dance, whether it's martial arts. One of my biggest regrets, I'm a Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu practitioner now, right? I trained at Brave Martial Arts down the street. And one of the things I hate is I'm like, man, I wish I would have started BJJ like when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Mind you, my body might have been a bit more of a mess.
They probably would have had to put you 5 years ahead too, man.
No, but who knows? But it would have been amazing if I would have started at 18 years old. Because now I'm like I said, I'm almost 40. So just doing that, like, I wish I would have done more in terms of physical activity.
Here's the thing. I ask everyone that comes on, and it's not a regret, but if you can go back, it's a two-part question. If you can go back and tell yourself or give yourself advice as an athlete, what would it be? And if you can go back in time at your younger self for school, what would the advice that you would give yourself?
As an athlete, I would have said, like, take care of your body way more. Like, invest in your body. Take time in your body.
Food-wise or
food-wise, and don't get me wrong, like, I did it a lot in university, you know, like food-wise, but I mean taking that extra time to stretch and doing other activities. Because I played squash, I swam, I did all those things when I was playing at university just to change it up. But again, that's where my mentality was. But I would have done even more. And like I said, I would have done martial arts. I did some Aikido when I was playing at Ottawa U.
It wasn't cool at that point. Like it wasn't popular. So it wasn't cool.
Aikido still is kind of like on the hush hush, but jiu-jitsu was not like it is now.
Yeah, like I was in martial arts. I had brown belt 3 stripes and I hated it. It just wasn't fun. But
yeah.
Anyways, that's a different story.
But I definitely regret not investing more time in my body and just getting more knowledgeable about my body. I guess I just wasn't there yet.
And then school-wise,
I gave you the advice already, man. Like for high school, for example, take all the classes you hate at the end. Don't take them at the beginning. Take them at the end.
Listen, I don't know if we need one of those like disclaimers at the bottom. Jethro is not a guidance counselor.
I'm not a guidance counselor.
He knows what he's talking.
but
it's a good trick though. It's a good life hack.
I'm telling you. And the thing is, in terms of more advice for school, I would just say, again, just have fun and focus, because it opens up your options if you have good grades in everything.
Correct.
Right? Like
that's one of my things I wish I would have done.
Yeah, like if you just focus on the one thing, then it narrows your options versus just be good at everything. Be good at everything as much as you can. Like everybody has their strengths, everybody has their weaknesses. But if you try as hard as you can to just be good at everything, or at least even well-rounded, you know what I mean? Like of varied, like a pretty good average, but you're kind of varied everywhere versus, hey, he has a 95 in math. Oh, he has a 62 in French, Like try and balance things out as much as you can so that they look at you and they're like, oh, this is pretty well-rounded student. Like they're pretty good everywhere. You know what I mean? It's like I said, like it's in, like I do jiu-jitsu right now. It's like, okay, I know that this person is good at this one technique, right? Yes, it's scary if they've done that one technique 1,000 times, but if they got good at 3 techniques and they practice them evenly, then I have more to,
Yeah, well, that's sports. You're always attacking someone's weakness in a game, whatever it is. You're always, whether it's basketball, whether it's volleyball, whatever, soccer, you're literally going at that until they're making adjustments. So
absolutely,
I totally get it. I appreciate the advice. I know that you're good at what you do. You train high level athletes. You're in shape. You promote very good stuff. But something I see joy about, and you always posting, is your kids, man. Like, and I think that's very admirable. You talked about the impact your parents had on you, and you got 4 boys, right? I know we're coming short on time, but talk about that, man. Let's talk about like your family real quick, and give a quick shout out to your wife. I know you're always trying to talk about that. Let's give them their flowers.
Yeah, man. Shout out to Tess. I love you, and she's been holding me down since day one, man. Like if I would not be who I am if it wasn't, I could always say like if it wasn't my parents, but especially if it wasn't for her. She's amazing. I say this often, and I truly believe it, and it's that my wife is my heart, but my kids are my lungs.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? Like that's the way I feel, because we're married, like we could drive each other nuts. There'll be ups, there'll be downs, but like she holds me down. Like that's my home girl. You know what I mean? And there's no way I'd be raising these 4 kings if it wasn't for her. And at the same time, God made it that she had those 4 kings. You know what I mean? Like some people would see that and go, man, you're not overwhelmed by having all of this testosterone around you. But I tell her all the time, I say, yo, God chose you to raise kings. He gave you that task, and those kids, they drive me nuts, but I would die for them in a second.
Something you don't realize until you have kids. I was with some friends yesterday. I literally said something to one guy. He was talking about something. I said something so simple, like there's no joy that I have when they're sleeping and you're walking upstairs, going to your room, and you just look in both rooms and you see them sleeping. Yeah. And I want to give a shout out to my wife, because while we're here, they're holding things down at the house, putting the kids to sleep. So I want to give props. But listen, Jethro, this was fun. I know we could have probably talked for another hour and we could have got it to stuff. But unfortunately, I mean, for me, I'm not a household name, so I can't have these super long episodes. Jethro, we might have to bring you.
Famous,
yeah,
bring me back when you're famous. You're already famous.
I'm not that famous but I'm planning to be. So yeah, when I get there. But I appreciate it, Jethro. What we're like, literally, what we're trying to do is, even if one kid watches this and gets some sort of nugget, you today, you really dropped a lot, and I think there's a lot of advice that is really resonates well with people. You don't think of things when you're a kid.
Mm-hmm.
I told you, like when I was in school and I was able to drop the sciences and the maths, I did that because I was just focused on getting the good average and focusing on sports. I always thought that I was going to go somewhere with sports, and that's not the case for everyone. And you know, it's okay that it didn't go that way, because you talked about how you were able to use those lessons and that competitive edge that you learned in playing on the football field into life, and you were able to transition into not only a lucrative situation, but something that you enjoy, right? Yep. So find your passion and keep doing it, man. So any final words of any mentors you had in life that you want to kind of give a shout out, whether it's now or when you were a kid, that's someone that never really thought of it, that had an impact on your life?
Like I said, man, you know, my wife is one of the people who pushed me into physiotherapy. She's like, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I don't know, I'm kind of thinking about physio. I'm kind of thinking about teaching." She's like, "Physio, like I could see you as a physio. You may want to think about it seriously." And you know, that's why, you know, one of the reasons I married her. Funny thing though, I know we're short on time, but funny thing, I remember my mom, back when we were in church, my mom said, "I like her. Go talk to her." And then
you got the blessing.
And then but this was like, I must have been like 15, 14, and she just said, "I like the way she presents herself. Go talk to her. She looks nice." And I married her. Like I married her like 12 years later.
Moms know best, man.
Moms know best, man. Moms know best. You know, shout out to mom. But yeah, man, just shout out to Dr. Rayner also for the opportunity to work at Human 2.0. You know, I've learned a lot from him as well. You know, from reading MRIs to just the ins and outs of the surgical world. And like I said, you know, shout out to Tyler out at Caveman Strong. I mean, he taught me a lot about mobility. Lot about mobility. He's still teaching me about mobility, even though he's in Cornwall, you know. So, you know, shout out to them. It was really cool. And, you know, mentors are like mostly like my family, you know, my boy Rob, because he keeps it real with me, you know. All my boys that keep it real with me, you know, so I appreciate them always.
That's enough said. I apologize for the San Francisco 49ers losing. I was rooting for you guys. My brother is, as you know, is a diehard fan like you, so hopefully the Vikings can step up and make some noise next year. But it's always, man, we always talk. We're in group chats. We play fantasy football together. Yep. You're a real guy. Anytime I had a question when it comes to, you know, my body, you're quick to answer. You're not a type of guy that says, "Oh, just book an appointment and come see me." You're a nice, legit guy, and I appreciate you. So I knew when I was scheduling who I want to be on the show, you had to be on it. So appreciate your time, guys. We're short on time, so you know, I think you're gonna want to share this. We're probably gonna have some good snippets and clips from this one, but today was a fun episode, man. I appreciate it. It was fun. Thank you guys
doing this again.
for sure. Yeah. So be sure to like and subscribe and share this episode for sure. So have a good night.
All right, man. Thank you.